Howdy, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I am chit-chatting today with Sarah Haugh, formerly Sarah Paulson. I say that because I've known her since high school, which is always fun. We were just chatting before we hopped on about the fact that we were both pretty big partiers and now both work in like mental health and wellness. The irony. And so Sarah is a licensed mental health counselor. She specializes in working with teens and women in addressing their anxiety or trauma. And she has her own private practice, North Shore Professional Therapy. And she's been in the field for 15 to 20 years, was it?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So, how are you today, dear?
Good, I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. This is so cool.
Yeah, I know this is going to be fun. I'm excited. I was saying too, it's always fun chatting to someone like you've seen through so many different seasons of life. Like we were always kind of on the peripheral of each other, I think, like having our siblings and John and
Yeah.
Josh. And so it's fun to see people's evolution from afar.
Yes, I would agree. Especially yours. Yours has been amazing to watch your journey.
Yeah, lots of big shifts over here. I don't know if the drastic change is a good thing or a bad thing. It just means I was like really, really partying and now I'm really, really a grandma.
Or just really, really healthy and, just blossomed, I would say.
Yeah, oh, thanks, lady. Well, I'm excited to focus on you and your own journey to the mental health field. I love hearing people's stories about how they got to where they got to. And so I know that's kind of a big question, but just thinking of the main things that led you to the work you do today, particularly your specialization, I would love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so as you know, back in high school and even before, well, I could start before high school. I had experienced a lot of trauma growing up in my house. And in high school started trying to cope with that and probably like self-medicate with drinking and partying and trying to figure out who I was, but also being afraid of who I was, not even wanting to figure that out in a way too. And then at one point, DCF actually got involved in my family, and they put all of us kids into therapy. And it was like DCF ordered and set up. And I was like 14 and got a therapist on the vineyard. And she was awesome. And she stuck with me through a lot of um, teenage anger and aggression, but also a lot of trauma symptoms and reactions I was having. And a lot of times I was like wanting to push her away and was just like, I don't want therapy. This is so dumb. And she really stuck by me and just held out positive regard for me and was consistent and showed up and reliable and really what I really needed. It was very healing, just the relationship in and of itself, let alone the therapy,
Mm.
more just the relationship. And so that is what made me want to be a therapist. So, and she was at LMHC, which is my type of license. So I asked her eventually. Actually, I went to college studying education at first. I thought I was going to be a teacher, but then I was like, no, I want to be what she is. So I asked her, what are you? And can I still do that with, I had only had 1 year in college so far. So changed my major from education to psychology and followed her path, like going to grad school for that and pursuing this type of license. And then working in the field, I just found, over the years that the clients I felt very effective with and that really like charged my energy up and I felt so rewarding working with were like teen girls and women and especially with anxiety and trauma. So it's no surprise. That's like a copy of what I was.
Yeah, it works out that way often because it just you can relate so much, and on top of that, you can anticipate like what they need from you and like how to best support that, I think too.
Yeah, I would agree. It really is. very significant when you have been through it,
Mhm.
versus just learning about it in a textbook or something.
Totally.
Um, so yeah, so that's what when I started my private practice, I decided that would be, really my niche and what I really focus on. And even just with all of the continue ed trainings we do, just really narrowing it down in those topics, like women's mental health or like up and coming anxiety modalities and trauma modalities, just kind of combining all of that.
Yeah. Yes, I know. That stood out to me how you said too the relationship itself was healing. Sounds like for you at that point, it just having someone consistently there that showing up for you was healing itself. And that therapeutic relationship is so cool. And I started therapy very young on the island too. And it really normalized therapy for me. I think, dealing with childhood trauma as well, and my mom just putting me in therapy at a young age. Um, then when I got older, I'm like, oh, everyone doesn't just like go to therapy.
You're a therapist.
Yeah, they're like, huh? In high school. Was your dad a therapist on the island?
My therapist, yeah, she was on the, she
It
still
was
is.
it was it Amy?
No, but she was friends with Amy.
Oh, I was like, Amy was mine. I loved Amy, and she was like such a significant figure in my life too. Like at that age.
Yeah, Amy was my cousin's actually, and same
Yeah.
thing.
I know and then she worked at the high school, so she was around. I'll have to like send this episode to her. Hey, remember me? Gave you a shout out. Yeah, she's awesome. But yeah, it is. It's so cool to be able to work with people on things you struggled with yourself and came out the other side of. And you said one piece about you love working with up and coming modalities for anxiety and trauma. So share more about what those are. And I know you also do a lot of blending of like Eastern and Western. So I'd love to hear more about like your therapeutic approach, what tools you like using and why.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, as therapists in grad school, we learn these kind of like tried and true, evidence-based, very Western medical model modalities like cognitive behavior therapy. And then a lot of therapies based off of that, like dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive processing therapy. There's just like a bunch of spin-offs of that. And so you would hear the acronym CBT for cognitive behavior therapy.
Mm.
So we all get trained in that, and we are kind of taught like that's it, like that's what you do, kind of. um, and then when we graduate, we're like, this doesn't seem like enough, like as we're doing it, and it does help. It does help to a degree, I think, and some people it helps tremendously, you know. But other times I find and what we now know about trauma, just in a lot of the trainings I've taken in trauma. And actually, out of grad school, I worked in the inner city of Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury for multiple years, just with people who have experienced severe and consistent and multi-generational traumas. That trauma isn't so much just a cognitive response, it's a very physiological one.
Yeah.
And like these Eastern modalities really have been so meaningful for me to learn about, practice for myself, but also to interweave them into sessions. And so some of those are simple things that are now much more commonly understood and other therapists use, like mindfulness and breath work. Things like that. But I also include like some more advanced techniques that are somatic, very somatically based, like certain, almost like certain acupuncture points that we know about that are connected to a nerve called the vagus nerve.
Wow. Love
As
the Vegas nerve.
yeah, like the wandering nerve. And that's what it's called because it goes like all the way from your brainstem down to your guts, basically. And that's where we always hear like, oh, I just felt it in my gut. Like I knew something was wrong. I felt it there. And that's where like really accepting that and incorporating that into our work instead of like, okay, what did you think though at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Challenge started thought and like I think, like I said, that sort of cognitive work has a place and it has research behind it to support it, but these somatic interventions are necessary, in my opinion. Like, I don't think this is enough. I think it's a combination. And then the like most recent one that I've incorporated is the certification I just completed in nutrition and mental health. And I feel like that like kind of closed this loop because I still was like something is still like missing. I really felt.
Yeah.
Once incorporating that information is just so holistic because we're using basically all the modalities that are available. And for different clients, different ones like might work better or just help them feel better. But my first goal, especially in specializing in anxiety and trauma, is really just helping people regulate their nervous system and learn like to do if you are going into that fight or flight response and how to work with that and make friends with that so that it can calm down a little bit, you know. But I
Yes.
think like nutrition is a big part of that, and so is nature, and so is breath work, and so is self-compassion, and even like some somatic strategies like rocking back and forth or humming. Or,
EFT.
yes, yeah, yes, exactly.
You are speaking my
Oh,
language.
good.
Everything you're saying, it's all so true and so needed, the shift of integrating, and I love how you said, self-compassion, and it just like there's so many facets of successfully healing ourselves, and I feel like it gets really oversimplified on like social media or just if you're like, okay, it's like no, all of these pieces of the puzzle need to like exist, and then we have to be able to develop that ability to like discern when they're kind of out of balance and we need more of this part of the wheel or that part of the wheel. And um what you were saying too about breath work and just somatic practices, it I always bring up the book The Body Keeps the Score
That's
because it's so good, but the awareness around like connecting to our body I think is rising for sure. And um I was even saying before we hopped on this call, remember how like I feel like we're so disconnected to how food even makes us feel, but even a lot of people don't even know how stress feels in their body, or they're so used to being in a state of like heightened stress that they don't realize like what a regulated nervous system feels like. I
yes.
think it's so powerful to be able to walk people through some like processing of emotions through somatic practices and building the resiliency. Like that's a big topic for me with sober curious clients because a lot of people haven't really like traversed their emotions without a numbing agent, and being able to do that and be like these feelings are just gonna, you can move through uncomfortable feelings or explore like why we're having them, so there's all of the things, but I love that all. So you also said you do EMDR, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, will you share more about what a EMDR session looks like?
Sure, sure. So it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it's a trauma processing modality. And essentially, I'm trying to think of how to narrow it down the best I can without boring everybody with jargon. But essentially, what it does is it gives an opportunity to reprocess a trauma by engaging the left and the right hemisphere of the brain at the same time. And the movement, there's a bilateral stimulation involved. It started out with just eye movements back and forth, but now you can have tappers. It's any sort of bilateral stimulation. So you could do like bilateral sounds in each ear. You could have people tap like this during it, like if it's virtual, or sticking with the eye movements is always fine too. But we I basically you have them pick a target trauma and then identify like a cognition that they've made about the world or themselves that's like
Hmm.
global. So for example, they might think maybe somebody who was assaulted might think, um, I caused this. I shouldn't have put myself in that situation or something. And to make that a more global, like what they call like a negative cognition. I don't love the word negative, but um, it might be something like, I'm bad,
Mhm.
I'm dirty, I do this to people. So then you have them remember, like, bring up what sort of sensations they're feeling in their body when they think about the memory. And then you have them hold all those three things together and you do the bilateral stimulation. So they'll hold the negative cognition, the sensations in their body, and the target memory, like an image of it. Pretty much, I think, the worst part of the memory, and you do the bilateral stimulations, and it just helps along the processing and desensitization to like the emotional charge that's linked to it. And then comes the next part where you install a positive cognition that they want to believe when they think of the event. So maybe the belief could be, um, this was not my fault, or if it was something that maybe somebody had some responsibility, like if somebody's trauma was drunk driving and they killed somebody or something, they have some responsibility there. So to if their cognition was this is all my fault, maybe the positive cognition you can install after could be like, I had some responsibility and I can change, or and I've learned from this, and I'm not that person I was who did
Yeah.
that. Like something.
Yeah. It's like assisted rewiring beliefs. Yeah, it's cool. I've definitely heard the bilateral component is sort of like the integral piece. But I don't think I've heard it as in depth as that. So thank you. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's just kind of like swapping in those more productive, constructive beliefs. I love that. So, yeah, and what else I was thinking about when you were talking with this sort of holistic view of health and looking at nutrition and somatic practices and even like our attitude about ourself and our belief system is the idea of epigenetics and nutrigenomics. Have you heard of both of those?
Epigenetics, yes, but I haven't heard of nutrigenomics.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Okay. You will love this because it's speaks to exactly what you're doing with nutrition and mental health. But so epigenetics is kind of how things can, our environment influences the expression of disease, which you know. But then nutrigenomics is that same concept applied specifically to nutrition. So how food can affect the expression of our genes. And
wow.
so I feel like that's something you would be really into because of that whole intersection of nutrition and mental health, which is so huge. And I feel like people really, I even disconnect so much sometimes from like having too much coffee and then being anxious or something, like doing stuff like that and being like, I don't feel good. Well, you just ate like a bunch of shit. And if you eat a bunch of shit all of the time, then you probably are regularly not going to feel good, not just physically, but mentally too.
Yeah, exactly. And like too much coffee can cause arrhythmias and like all sorts of stuff
Mhm.
that, we're having anxiety because we're like, why do I have a heart problem? And, the cycle just, I've recently started drinking half calf. That's like my new thing. Because
Yeah.
like you said, like there just has been too many times that my nervous system is jittery, and it's just obviously because of, especially when I got an espresso maker.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. You're like, I think that's
I
too
Yeah,
much.
the first time I had like this super strong pot, and I was like, "This is amazing! I'm gonna get so much done." And then I was like realizing the accumulation because the half-life of caffeine is not that fast, actually. So you could like still have some in your system the next day. So if you keep like adding on to that, it will add up to like now you're just walking around jittery.
All the nerves. I know. One thing I also notice with a lot of people that I work with and even myself is just after like regular drinking for so long, binge drinking or just like overindulging on a regular basis. Like I don't think people know what their normal is. You're just like so disconnected from your body and also like usually not feeling like your peak. And so I notice a lot of my clients will end up being like, I have this health issue coming up now that I stopped drinking, or this one or that one. I'm like, maybe you're just noticing it more now because you're becoming more in tune with your physical self. Um, so yeah, it's wild. I think that's a great uh added certification to get in there, nutrition and mental
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking like it just is so brave for people to start to do that for the first time, even to get into their own body. And especially if there's trauma that they've been repressing, getting into their body to notice their body is threatening sometimes and really scary. So it's really brave to, try to, especially if drinking or other substances have been numbing that or, helping you take it out of your awareness. That is sometimes one of the biggest shifts I see with people who are like, okay, I want to do this work now. And then really realizing how hard it can be at first, but like how brave they really are can be also very empowering that like you don't need to run away from it. And you can learn the skills to tolerate this really significant discomfort as you're enhancing your awareness. It does come with.
health. I know that transitional period of like becoming aware that you want to do the work and then like beginning to do it, but still being in the reality you created, as your old self is just so uncomfortable and knowing you want to grow and change, but you don't have the tools yet. And it's like, it's hard work. And yeah, I agree with you that it once you kind of do it yourself, you're like, damn, that's hard. And then you're re-inspired by every client person you come into contact with that is genuinely doing the same thing. It's like you're like proud of them and yourself at the same time. It's
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Yes, yes.
it's so cool. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, your own past. You mentioned traumatic like episodes growing up and how you think unhealed trauma showed up maybe personally in your life and how you think it shows up in the greater collective for people. What does it look like when people don't deal with their trauma and how can that be passed along? What sort of ripple effect can we see from healing or the choice not to?
Yeah, I love that question. It's like in my head, it's like a 20-hour like response.
I feel like I always ask questions like that. People are like,
I did at first, I'm like, okay, another 20-hour response. I have, but I would speak to my own will help me narrow it down. And but a lot of this is very common in many people with unhealed trauma. And so if what we know of like according to our diagnostic manual, PTSD includes symptoms like re-experiencing your trauma. So people who might not realize they've had trauma, including me when I was younger, didn't realize that you might not have like these flashbacks, like what you hear in like a combat veteran might have of a flashback, or what you think of as a flashback of like this visual image popping in your head, and you think you're back in this traumatic event. But it could be just more, again, like we're talking about somatically, a felt sense that just comes on and takes over. So, like, we're talking about random panic attacks that you have no idea what triggered them, or even just feeling jittery, feeling dizzy out of the blue, and not knowing why. Um, like, even especially like a lot of times people will wake up at night just like really anxious and still again they're like I didn't have a nightmare, I nothing bad is happening right now in my life, why am I feeling this
like
also.
visual anxiety that just permeates your life.
Yeah, it really does. And it is a flashback, really. It's like a somatic flashback, really, cognitive awareness.
Yeah.
So if you take me, I was maybe, I mean, I had years of a lot of trauma, but I still, when I think back to like my earlier childhood when my dad was still in the house, I'm like trying not to cry, but I feel anxious and sad for that younger version of me. But
Yeah.
now I have compassion toward myself and that younger girl, whereas before that was like mixed in with like my present. So like if I felt that feeling, if I thought about my childhood, felt that feeling, it felt like it was also now happening. Like now I have to feel this scary doom feeling. And so, but I also wasn't consciously connecting that. It was just like maybe I'm going home to visit my house and this feeling is coming on. I don't know why, because I have a great relationship with my mom and my mom never hurt me and my dad's not there anymore. But like, I'm not connecting that it's just like the house, the smell of the house bringing up this
Yeah.
memory,
Wow.
you know?
Yeah, it is wild how scent is. I think it's like the most tied to memory, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that all of the senses can do it, but smell is really significant one. Even like I still will smell this cologne and it reminds me of being in high school because my boyfriend at the time wore it like every day. And it's so funny if I ever smell it, I feel like I'm back in that time, you know? And
It
we
is.
songs, certain songs, you just feel like you're back in time. So that is this like implicit trauma memory, which is again somatically stored, and so it needs to be like somatically healed. Um, and also any memories from like before we're verbal and can talk, those are all pretty much stored somatically. So like you might have felt sense that something happened when you were like one or something, but you don't remember cognitively that, but your body doesn't remember, just like the book. Body keeps the score.
Yeah, yeah. I know my mom always says like because we had a traumatic like car accident when I was 10 months old and my mom's always like I feel like you have like cellular level trauma and I've talked about this on other podcasts where I was like very dismissive of my trauma in quotes because it was before I like cognitively remembered. But then just all the work I've done since, I'm like, oh, hell no, honey. That trauma is stored right inside of you. And yeah, like stop dismissing the fact that just because you don't remember, it's not impacting you.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's research to suggest even like prenatally, you can implicitly store trauma. Like if your, mom who's pregnant with you is experiencing a lot of stress or abuse or things like that, that it can.
Yeah. And at the very least, we know the microbiome is translated and the microbiome is shaped by psychological stress. And if that she's undergoing a lot of like psychological stressors, then that's negatively impacting her gut, which is going to be passed along at birth. And that kind of shapes like the foundation of our health and also then impacts our mental health from the vagus nerve. Like
Exactly.
that big circle right on back.
We're
You
just inventing a whole new like holistic modality right now.
Yeah, so it's like it is it's all connected, as you know. So you were saying you felt like, you noticed sort of like visceral reactions.
Yes, and this is very common. And this is where, like, I have a lot of clients who come to me noticing that, noticing of anxiety really, but they haven't connected yet that it's related to something that had occurred that is being stored somatically. Um, but then some other ways that unresolved trauma can come out and came out for me is even just in you develop core beliefs, and this is where like those more cognitive based therapies come in, but like um, I definitely felt really ashamed, like as I got older, ashamed of who I was in high school or like, things like that. And wanted to like hide those parts of me as I met new people in college. Like I didn't want them to know these things. And when you kind of are hiding parts about yourself, that just leads to lower self-esteem and feelings of shame, which really shame does a lot of damage to us. Having skeletons that we're hiding does a lot of damage because we're like at enemy with parts of ourselves that need us. Like these, like this younger high school version of me needs me. And instead I was like, oh, I hate her. Like I don't even want her,
Shunning her. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
That part IFS, internal family systems, like it's all about, that. And shadow work is like another.
An ego state. Or,
Yeah. But it makes you feel like sad that you ever did, you like reflect and you're like, oh, like I feel bad for even being ashamed of that. And like you do see how it comes out sideways when you're like repressing versions of yourself and yeah, you feel like you're just not in alignment. Like you feel like you're an imposter, you know.
exactly, exactly. And I remember even getting married and like having a therapist at that time, a different therapist, and saying like, if my husband knew who I really was in high school, he wouldn't have married me. Like that's how deep my thoughts were. And like when I was like, part of my work was like loving this part of myself, having compassion for this part of myself, being there for her, this younger part, and then like sharing some of this stuff with my husband. And he's like, I just like love you more. Like that's so brave. So, so healing again, just to like not only have me accept that part, but then be brave enough to like say, okay, you no longer have to be like a skeleton in my closet. You are welcome, and I'm not ashamed of you. Like you get to be part of my story, in my open story. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just be proud of who you are. It's like it's so relieving to just be like, yeah, I was like a hot, embarrassing mess. Me personally, not you. But just seeing like taking ownership, and it's a lot easier to take ownership when you're actively changing and like trying to be a better version of yourself. And then it's like, yeah, well, she was like had her flaws, but she was doing the best she could at that time, and taking accountability and ownership, but then integrating. And you said you felt like a lot of shame around like high school version of you. Do you feel like it was like the shame around the traumatic events specifically, or the shame around like how you handled yourself throughout high school?
Think like the acting out behaviors that I did. So
Yeah.
mainly partying and
Yeah.
fighting and you know,
Fighting? I don't remember that.
sneaking out
Yeah,
and
I did all that stuff too. I was just a couple years behind you, doing all the same things. I know it is. God, I did so many like embarrassing things too.
thank God there wasn't like social media the way it is now because who knows what people would have recorded.
Part of me feels like, I feel like it gives us more street cred in the mental health streets, okay? Because no one wants to talk to a therapist that hasn't like struggled with their own shit.
True,
Like
true.
a lot of times it is hard when some if like I think a lot of times um it's really empowering to clients. Not that they know like your whole backstory. Well, they would know mine because I share it on social media all the time. But I do think it is. It's like
Video
refresh.
on the couch. That new post you made. I love it.
Oh, which one?
You had a video of you on the couch,
Oh,
like
yeah, with my burrito. I know I have so many videos of me drunkenly eating burritos. I'm like, I do love burritos, and that I'm not ashamed of, okay? But um yeah, I feel like there is something cool about, having somebody who's gotten to the other side. I mean, there's always still work to be doing, but it's inspiring to talk to someone who's been through something similar, and that it's like there's hope for changing. And I find like it was really empowering to share more about like what a hot mess I was, because I do want people to be like, no, like trust me, I get
yeah, yeah.
it.
Like that it it destigmatizes it. And also, through all of the therapy trainings, but my own therapy, it's just such a reframe to be that's not who I am. It's how had to react to survive. It's like what I was doing to survive and cope as
Wow.
a kid. It's not like that's who I am.
Yeah.
It was necessary. It was like who I had to be to survive in that world that I was in.
Yeah. And now you get to acknowledge that and love her and like thank her for, getting you where she did, and recognizing, without that version of yourself, like you wouldn't have gone here. And also those challenging experiences that we get to grow through, they just inform our capability of like how we can help others, and how we can, have our most productive impact in the world too. I think when you get to the other side of working through some healing and realizing how many people are like stuck in wounding, it's like, oh man, we need more people doing this kind of work, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. And it really enhances your empathy so
Yeah.
significant.
Yeah, totally. I see like feel like so much of today's culture and just polarization or intensity around emotion. Like in general, it feels like our society is very like, whoa, intense when it comes to like outrage culture and like cancel culture and all these things. And I'm like, I feel like this is all a result of unhealed trauma. Like everyone needs to just go to therapy.
Right? I know it's true. It really is. And that reminds me of another, a very common unhealed trauma symptom based on beliefs is expecting that you'll be harmed or like in relationships, even friendships, work relationships, romantic relationships, just expecting that it's going to go badly. And so being in like a defense mode of that, which can then put you into that fight or flight response and cause you to react so intensely to things.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like people are just kind of in fight or flight mode, and it's like just for whatever reason, maybe that could be a reason, or the variety of like other reasons why they would be stuck in fight or flight, and then carrying that forward in our day-to-day interactions is just not conducive to a peaceful society, it appears.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have any other thoughts on things that you see commonly in terms of
I
unhealthy?
see also really kind of what we were just saying, just like a lot of dysregulation, just really feeling like emotions are taking over you. And so with that, you might see substance abuse or other self-harm behaviors like excessive, unprotective sex, like going out gambling all the time, cutting, um, anything like that to just because the person is so dysregulated and doesn't know how to, like, what to do with this flood of emotion.
Yeah, like impulsivity.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So tell me too, when you, with your specialization in women and teens with anxiety and trauma, like what do you feel like are the biggest contributing factors in today's world to, any negative impact on mental health and how that can be rectified?
Yeah. Well, I'll separate it because I think like the biggest one for women versus teen girls is probably a little different. Where for women, I think, well, I guess teen girls also for this, but like the unrealistic societal expectations put on women and teen girls. But I mean, even down to like how we're supposed to look and what body weight we're supposed to have. And I think that that sort of stuff affects us on so many levels because even down to like we're not eating enough sometimes because we're trying to fit this mold that's not realistic. That's not like how bodies are supposed to be. We're not eating like enough protein because of that, or like we're avoiding carbs because of that, or things that like we need to fuel our body. And also even like things like the way we breathe is wrong because society has conditioned us to like think that we're supposed to like suck in our stomach all the time. And like really our stomach is supposed to be like out and full of air. Like we're supposed to like look somewhat pregnant. Like all people are like our belly's supposed to like fill with air when we breathe in and then go out. But instead we like go like stomach again. Yeah. And like
Not stress out, weird stress out.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, all of these things, I'm just sharing those two examples because, like, in addition to all the other stress that comes along with something even as singular as like body image expectations, these little tiny changes in how we're taking care of ourselves, how we're breathing, how we're eating is so much more significant than I think we realize, because it is setting up our nervous system for failure. It's setting up our nervous system to be anxious and to be wired for survival instead of wired for safety and connection. And that causes mental health symptoms like anxiety disorders or depressive disorders, eating disorders, all sorts of stuff. So I think that that is the biggest threat. And then for women and moms, especially, it's like then you add, like, when you have a baby, like this whole extra, like, crazy set of like implicit expectations from all the people around you and society and movies. And like, it's really wild what is expected of moms. I mean, I seriously can't believe it sometimes that just like how much we do and this mental load of what we do for like raising our kids, but yet if we work, we're like still doing all of that plus working. And, I think back to simple things like how moms who work are called working moms, but like dads who work are just called dads. And like moms who, uh, what's the other one I always think of? I lost my train of thought. Just like how the expectations are like assumed to be the mom. Like the mom is the default parent. She makes the doctor appointments. She's monitoring how many diapers there are. She's figuring out if she's going to nurse or bottle feed. She's, figuring out are they going to do baby led weaning or are they going to do purees? Like she's doing the research. She's figuring it out. And even if the dad or the other partner is trying to be like an equal partner and they're like, tell me what to do. I will do it. I want to help. It's still just like, but why is it a default that like the mom is the one to figure it out and then like give you the task? That's still a lot of work to like
Yeah.
plan it and assign the task. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
and
I know. The mental load is wild. Just the little like daily like things for a house to function. Like the things you noted, like counting the diapers and like, okay, I have systems of like, all right, I just have an ongoing list. If I walk around the house, something is missing that I notice, I have to add it to my list. John's like, why are you're always on your phone? I'm like, you don't understand how many things I'm doing in here besides everything on social media.
yes,
It's
exactly.
a
And at
lot.
that point, I just got one of those like shopping list magnet things for your fridge
Mhm.
because I was like frustrated. It was like the overstimulation piece of like thinking of something and adding it, opening my phone, adding it to my note of like to buy or my shopping list. Or my husband could just say from like across the room, like, babe, add ketchup to the list. And it's like, okay, I gotta go find my phone. Okay, now the kid is crying. Like, okay, now I open my phone. Wait a minute. Now I forgot.
How did I get to Instagram?
Yeah. And
I
then
blacked out and now I'm on TikTok.
like down a rabbit hole of doom scroll. What the hell happened?
Now I'm looking at pictures of someone's homestead in Kansas and I forgot what he told me to put on the list.
And you go to the store and then you didn't bring it home. And then it's like, why didn't you get ketchup? I told you. And it's like, are you kidding? Like, so I got this thing for my fridge and it has been really helpful. Like,
Yeah.
seriously. Now, and there's a pen. So he will just write it. So no longer does he tell me anything. He will go and write it. And then if I go to the store, I take that
Yeah.
at
Like you're closer to the pad.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
You go deal with it. Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah, it is. Motherhood is a interesting journey with the I think too with the access to information that people have at their fingertips. It's like taking so much of our like
Yeah.
autonomy and
Confidence.
yeah, confidence because we're just like, okay, well, what's this person doing? And that's like one of the main things I always talk with people about is like, there's way more information than we need, but everything has to be measured against your integrity and like your inner compass. That's what like the goal for me with healing is, being able to trust ourselves and know we're worthy to like listen to our intuition and we have the clarity to do so because we're taking good care of ourselves and
Yes. Yes. That's so, yeah. So I think for women that I think like with all of that being the default parent and the expectation dumped on them and without getting the validation for it is a really big threat to their mental health because they feel like something's wrong with them that they're so stressed out because like nobody's explained or made it explicitly available that like this sucks. Like this is a lot of freaking work and it makes sense that you feel like exploding sometimes because this like instead it's just like, well, that's just what moms do. So good job.
yeah. Yeah. Shut up and keep going.
So
Carry
I
on and make sure you're smiling.
yeah, sure look presentable or, whatever. And then for teens, I think it's so cliche, but it is just such a problem is social media and phones and electronics. And it's starting like younger and younger and younger. Like most third graders that I know now have like a phone and are like, you know, it's a problem and it's affecting their mental health significantly. I mean, just that even the doom scrolling, this
Yeah.
comparing them to others, noticing that they were not invited somewhere when two other of their friends are hanging out. The stuff that can be said over text anonymously and all those apps that they're on, where like some real damage is done and there's no accountability because it's not like when you are saying it to someone's face and like working it out. Um,
Yeah, I know. I think that's kind of like a larger problem even for adults on social media and the way people have started to communicate with each other because it is so much more anonymous and normalized and for people to like troll and people are like, oh, just don't ignore it. It's like, what? Why are we just accepting this ridiculously low level of communication amongst adults? It's like adult bullying and it's just so yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
because now people can comment anonymously and post anonymously. You're like reading a thread and it's like anonymous member number 1869 and it's like all these comments, like all these anonymous people.
it is. It's and I think, that's another unhealed trauma. Like if you are going out and feel the need to like project negativity, like there's likely some things that you need to work through, but it's too easy for people to like project their anger elsewhere, and social media is a great place for that. But I often think about social media just with the way I use it for work, and then also like what my intention is with it, what I want to do with it for Arthur, like my kids in general. And I kind of fall on like I think it's our responsibility to do a better job with like how we use it because I do feel it has good aspects, but then human nature, we like abuse it and use it in a toxic way. And we're like, social media is toxic, and it is, but like, how do we navigate the increasingly like accessible world of technology with kids? What do you think about that? What do you do with your kids?
I think that, well, they're little, they're 3 and 5, so they obviously don't have a cell
Oh
phone.
yeah.
Is
You're
that
like, so they're on their iPhones right now.
they're texting their friends.
They're downstairs on FaceTime. No, I'm just kidding.
Uh, But I am committed and like I really hope you hold me to this in like whatever year it comes up. But like I am committed that they will not have cell phones with like social media apps until they're in high school at least because and
Yeah.
even then, um I wish that every parent would do that because it would make it easier for everybody because like it is hard. I have a lot of friends with kids and then clients with kids and the problem is they're like if I do that like to my fifth grader, all their friends are that's how they hang out now mostly. Like a lot of them don't even hang out in person anymore like we used to do after school. They like go get on like a Discord chat and they're like and then a lot of the boys, not to stereotype gender stuff, but like what I'm seeing typically is like a lot of the boys go and get on these video games where they're talking to each other and doing all sorts, causing, saying mean things to each other on these like Fortnite or something. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I feel so old. Like, what am I gonna do? Arthur, it's gonna be like a whole new world when Arthur's a teenager.
I know maybe like social media will have like exploded and just be like, really, or like the pendulum will swing. Maybe
We're all just like Amish.
I can hope. Yeah, I know. I feel
I'm
like
like,
that.
honestly, that's looking more and more appealing the older I get. I'm like, sign me up.
Like, we'll milk a cow, like, no real worries. Just, yeah,
My bonnet on and frolic through the pastures, churn some butter, like
see,
good.
yeah. But
Uh,
I wish, I really think if we all as parents could like agree that like we're not going to do it until college when our kids' brains are more developed and they're not going to be doing such crazy things on there to each other. That's bullying and really traumatizing, and really damaging these kids' self-esteem. And I wish we could do that, but I don't know. But that's my commitment, and I really hope I don't cave. I can just see it now, that being like, but Mom, I'm the only one. I'm like a loser. I have no friends because everything thinks it's so weird that I don't have an Instagram or something. And they're not even going to be on it. The kids already think Instagram is lame. Like they're on like all the other things. But
yeah. You have to be like, listen, honey, I survived off snake and you can too.
yep, exactly. And
Right?
dial up.
Nokia it is.
Yeah. Yes, remember we had Nokia phones and we had dial up AIM.
Oh yeah, I remember.
You put in a wait message and you
Yeah.
put those initials in there with like, oh, these are my girls or whatever.
Oh my God. I remember putting up an away message when like I found out my boyfriend cheated on me. Hey everyone.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I made it my away message status.
I remember that so well. Yeah.
Booster 693.
I don't even remember what mine was. I think it was something with Sally. So that was my nickname for a little
Oh
while.
my gosh, so funny. Yeah, let's go back to that. That was wholesome.
Yeah, yeah. But still way better than what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. I was like borderline serious that it was wholesome compared to now. They're probably like, who knows what they're seeing. Like, I think the worst was ever like chat rooms ASL. Like that's the worst it ever got for me.
That's where really bad predators were lurking.
The pedophiles and all the chat
Somebody,
rooms. I'm a 17-year-old boy.
right, or like a 40-year-old man.
Yeah, getting catfished in AIM chat rooms. Oh, to be a millennial.
No, we really had an interesting ride.
Oh my God, I know. And now we're just here helping people heal.
Ding. Yep.
Oh, oh my gosh. All right, tell us what if you could go back and give, say, like teenage Sarah some words of wisdom from where you are today, which I think is really fitting because you were saying that that was actually a version of yourself that you kind of felt ashamed of. And so tell us, like, if you could go back and tell her anything, what would it be?
I would probably say, a few things come to mind. Like, I'm here with you. You're not alone. Um, this isn't forever. You get to be me when you grow up. And this isn't your fault. Um, this isn't your fault. This isn't your fault. It makes sense what you're doing. And I see you and you're not alone. That's what I would say.
Hmm, I love that. What advice would you give to anyone else out there that's like just starting to embark on the inner work or kind of addressing their own healing?
I would say that you're very brave in remembering that this is hard work and you're very brave to go and try to resolve this and heal this, but it will probably be the most meaningful thing you ever do in your life. What I
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. It's like the hardest, but the most meaningful. It's so worth it. So, yeah. And then thank you for sharing that. The last thing I wanted to ask about is please where people can find you, if you have a website, an Instagram,
do. Okay.
anything like that.
Okay, so my Instagram is slowly coming along. So you won't find anything like crazy amazing there yet. But I actually, not to sound like a teenager, but I have a TikTok account, and that has a
I
lot.
love TikTok.
Okay, I created one just for my business, and I put so many self-help tips on there, somatic strategies that are based on polyvagal theory.
I'm gonna find you right now.
Yeah. It's called anxiety trauma therapist. Let me just double check where the periods are in that, actually. Uh,
Who knew? I feel like I'm going rogue on
I
TikTok.
mean, my point in doing this, so it's at trauma.anxiety.therapist. And the reason I made this is to help with the doom scroll. Like, I am not one of the TikTok therapists who's just like, making fun of the world and whatever. It's really is self-help strategies. That's what the whole thing is. So there's somatic ones, there's cognitive behavior therapy ones, there's dialectical behavior therapy ones, um, polyvagal. I just did one about nature today.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm gonna do one on nutrition next. That's gonna be like my next 5 series based off of this course I just took in the certification. But so that is one way to get some cool free information. And then I have a website. Yes, it is northshoreprofessionaltherapy.com. And I have a blog on there too with self-help tips and stuff. So
I love that. Go girl. So good. I'm so happy to see you. So it's nice to be able to see like this growth and it is I love what you said about learning to just have compassion and love for those versions of yourself where it's like we're doing the best we could. We worked through it and got to a beautiful place.
yeah. Yes, yeah. Really, the self-compassion work is tremendously healing and brave.
Yes. So thank you so much for coming on, doing the podcast. And thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.